It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Oh, here we are, coming into that time of year. Oh, mercy. Help us all. The holidays are over. That's the way I think about it. The holidays aren't over until the Packers play their last game of the season. So, if they don't make the playoffs, then the holidays are over that, December 31st or whatever that last game is of the regular season. If they make it into the playoffs, the holidays continue until they either win the Super Bowl or lose in the playoffs. So, yeah. So they lost out in San Francisco. So the holidays are over, officially now. And now we have the rest of January, all of February, all of March. The snow is just wonderful and beautiful the first couple times it falls. I get this warm glow. Oh, isn't it lovely? And I love it. And then the third or fourth time, it's like, okay, that's enough now. That's fine. And then it just continues through April. But I'm not one to complain about the weather. No. I get slightly annoyed at people who complain about the weather. Come on, it's cold. Put on a hat. Put on a jacket. You're fine. You're not going to die. It's really not a problem. Even the snow. Yes, it's an inconvenience for a day or two. When it first falls and before the plows get out and the salt trucks and maybe you have to dig yourself out from your parking spot. Yeah, it's a pain. Sure it is. But it's so short-lived. It doesn't last very long. And then the sidewalks are shoveled and the streets are plowed and you're fine. Snow has very little negative impact except for those few hours. And if we didn't have to drive everywhere, if the world just worked a little better, if public transportation was better, we wouldn't all be depending on our cars. So when you're complaining about snow, you're really complaining about not being able to drive properly in it. And what you're really complaining about is our lack of public transportation and the fact that we're just kind of locked in. Many of us, we don't really have choices. We've got to drive that car. We're supposed to be so free. It's the land of the free. Think of all the freedoms you don't have. You don't have the freedom to just give up your car. I mean, if you want to drastically change your lifestyle and if you want to change your career, I guess there are ways to do it, but it's tough. It's not really a practical option for a lot of people, most people probably. I went for 2 years without a car, and I got to tell you, it was maybe the happiest 2 years of my life, in that regard at least. It just took away so much stress. I remember the first day back in a car after having given it up for 2 years, and as soon as I got behind the wheel, this sort of sense memory just started flooding back into my body. Oh, yeah, I remember this. This is kind of horrible. And then I pull out and I'm driving in traffic and all the other drivers are such idiots. And it's like, oh yeah, this really is. This is bad. I remember how terrible this makes me feel, and my body tensed up, and I stressed out, and I didn't like people anymore. As compared to those 2 years when I lived without a car, and life was just so much better. And again, I was able to, in that particular circumstance, I was able to do it because I lived in a town. This was in the Bay Area when I lived out in California. Which is why I'm a Niners fan, by the way. I always root for the Packers when they play the Niners, of course. But whenever the Niners are not playing the Packers, I root for the Niners. So go Niners. What was I saying? I was living in the Bay Area. living in a little town called Martinez, which is in the North Bay, just north of Berkeley. Nice little town. And what was really nice about it, it had the train station right there in town, very nearby where I lived. I could walk or bike easily to the train station. And then on the train, I could go up to Sacramento, which is where my job was. I was working for Sirius XM at the time. Or I could go the other way and go into the city, go into San Francisco. It was pretty sweet. It was a nice setup. And when I had errands to do, if I had grocery shopping to do, I could hop on my bike, put on my empty backpack, fill it up with groceries, and bike it on home. So I walked and I biked and I took the train. My routine every day was to bike on down to the train station, roll my bike onto the car that had a car just for bikes, one of the cars. And then I'd take that on up to Sacramento. Then I'd hop on my bike and go a couple more miles to the radio station. It was pretty sweet. So I walked and biked every day. I felt pretty good about things. I never had that road rage. Never had that for 2 years. It was pretty fantastic. Oh, I did get doored once. Bikers, you know what I'm talking about? Of course. I'm riding in the bike lane. Okay, the Sacramento had a lot of bike lanes. Pretty good. By the way, Sacramento's a beautiful city. They've made it their policy to have trees. It's Tree City. I think that's one of their nicknames or something like that. They're just everywhere you look. There are trees, trees, and trees. This was a few years ago, but not that long ago. Only about what was it? Less than 10 years ago. So I imagine it's still the same. But yeah, they've made it just their policy over the years to have tons of trees in the city, right in the city. All the streets are lined with trees. It's beautiful. So yeah, anyway, I'm tooling down the road here in my bike lane, and right up ahead of me, a parked car. Of course, I was always on the lookout. Swings his car door open, his driver's side door wide open right in front of me. Now, I had that split second to make a decision. If you've ever been in this kind of a situation, and a lot of things go through your mind in that just half a second there. Say, okay, well, all right, this guy just doored me. He just swung his door wide open right in front of me. I think if I really, again, this is all happening in half a second. All these thoughts are happening in half a second. I probably could swerve to the left and avoid this car door and save myself. But I don't really have time to check to see if there's a car right next to me or coming up on me on my left. So if I do swerve to the left, I might be going right in front of a car going 35 miles an hour. So I have a decision to make in this little split second. I can take that chance. I can swerve and miss the car door, at the risk of possibly riding in front of a speeding car that will kill me. Or I can just brace myself and take the hit. Well, of course, I decided to just slam right into the guy's door. Of course, the bike stayed right there. I kept on going. I flipped and flew several yards. I was wearing a helmet, good for me, and gloves, which helped. Otherwise, I probably would have really scraped up my hands pretty badly as I landed. And so there I lay in the bike lane, prone. The guy felt real bad, and I just kind of laid there for a while. Am I okay? You know, that moment when you sort of assess, all right, let's see now. Is anything broken? Anything bleeding? And it hurt, but I kind of laid there and took stock of the whole situation. Slowly got myself to my feet, walked around, took a few paces. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to live. I think I'm okay. Things hurt here, but there's nothing in particular broken or bleeding, so I guess I'm all right. The bike was pretty much totaled. The bike I couldn't ride my bike the rest of the way. I had to walk the rest of the way to work. And the guy was very apologetic, of course. I wrecked his car door, That made me feel a little better. He couldn't close his car door. I broke it. So that one little incident notwithstanding, living without a car was great. And I recommend it. If you can do it, if you can swing it, if you can arrange your life in such a way that you do not have to rely on a car, I highly recommend it. My mental health was so much better for 2 years. But then conditions change, situations change, jobs, housing, life. And I found I needed to have that car again. And ever since, I've thought of that. I thought, if I could arrange my life again in such a way. So yeah, when the weather's bad, well, let me take that back. I don't even want to use that expression. When the weather's bad, no. That's a judgmental phrase. No, when it snows, when the beautiful snow comes down, we would have an entirely different attitude if we weren't tied to our cars. And even worse, it's bad enough to be tied to the car in order to get your groceries and sort of live your life. But you're tied to the car because you have to get to your job as well. And when it snows, most of us still have to get to our job, especially people with, crummy low-wage jobs. They close the schools, they close the churches, they cancel concerts. But if you're working at some crummy job, you better bet your boss is going to call you up. Say, get your ass down here. So you still got to go to work. A lot of people get snow days, but not everybody gets a snow day. You got to get to work, and the only way to get to work is to jump in your car, and the only way to jump in your car is to shovel your way to it, and then shovel your way out. Yeah, snow is in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is the damn world we live in, where bosses have control over you, and you have to do things because of money. And you know me, money must be abolished. Money is the root of all evil. All bad things come from money. You've heard the expression, the love of money is the root of all evil. People love to correct you. You know the kind of people who love to correct you? No, it's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Well, that might be the expression. And, these guys who are always right usually are right in their facts. They're just really snarky about pointing it out. So sure, that I'll concede that. Yes, that's the expression. I'm giving you a new expression. I'm taking out the love. No, money itself is at the heart, at the root of all bad things in this world. Pretty much. So love the snow, and here we are heading into the time of year. Yeah, like I say, that the first couple times, that December snow, the Christmas snow, New Year's Eve, isn't it all wonderful? Even maybe into the first week or two of January. Like I say, it's the Packers are still in the playoffs, so it's still the holidays until the Packers lose, and now they've lost. So holidays are over, and snow during the holidays is fine. In fact, it's more than fine. It's exactly what you want. You want it snowing. You want to be cozy inside with your popcorn, watching the Packers in the playoffs. What's more holidays than that? And now that's over. Oh well. and the Niners and the Chiefs move on to the Super Bowl. Oh well, you know who I'm rooting for. Lived in San Francisco in the Bay Area for many, many years. Love the 49ers. I always root for them when they're not playing the Packers. So I definitely have a horse in the race here. I will be rooting enthusiastically, cheering for the San Francisco 49ers. Why not? They're a good team. Let's face it. They're a very good team. And no matter who was playing the Kansas City Chiefs, I would be rooting for them anyway, because I root against the Chiefs because of the Native American thing. Sports teams that use Native American symbols and nicknames, and yeah, I'm not down with that. Now I have looked into it a little bit because I don't want to, hey, white guy talking here. Hi, white guy, listen to the white guy talking. I don't want to do that. So I did actually quite a lot of reading. I found many sources, and they're pretty mixed. I'll give you just one example. Is the tomahawk chop racist? Depends who you ask. The tomahawk chop, of course, is when all the fans are doing they mimic the tomahawk chop with their forearm and their hand, and they're doing the da 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 da. And I find a stadium full of white people doing that to be just gross and offensive. And I would never, even if I was born and raised in Kansas City, I would not do that. That is just gross and weird and offensive. And I pretty much stand by that. Let me read a little bit from this article. There's a tendency for people, non-native people in particular, to think of this as fairly innocuous, says Anderson, a member of the Potawatomi Nation. Let's see. Eric Anderson is professor of Indigenous and American Indian Studies at Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence. What does Anderson say? Some of this thinking has become so institutionalized that we don't even really stop to try to unpack it. Anderson says the tomahawk, historically, is merely a weapon and suspects that the chop is a nod to battles in indigenous societies, albeit one that distorts views of indigenous people. The tomahawk chop started with Florida State, which was granted permission from the Seminole tribe to partake in the chant and other such rituals. So that I found interesting. The Seminole tribe actually gave Florida State permission. In the early 1990s, Florida State alumni brought the chop to both the Atlanta Braves and Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, the Atlanta Braves do it too. So bottom line, and they've interviewed here a couple of native leaders and academics, and they're not all that upset about it. We don't focus all our attention on sports logos or radicalizing everything that comes along. This is another guy. Who's this? Cody Morton, Chiefs fan and member of South Dakota's Oglala Lakota Nation, says the tomahawk chop doesn't bother him. He does, however, feel that the controversial name of the Washington NFL franchise and the old mascot of the Cleveland Indians are offensive. Yeah, the Cleveland Indians got rid of the, what's his name? He had a name. I forgot what it was. You probably know. And of course, yeah, the Washington R word. I never, ever let that cross my lips. So this did modify my thinking a little bit, and this is only one of several sources and articles that I read. And there was a little bit of a mix, and a lot of, as I say, native leaders, academics, native thinkers, they're not that upset. So why should I be that upset? It's really up to them. As a white guy talking here, I defer to members of other groups. You tell me what you want to hear. You tell me what offends you. You tell me about your history. Not that. Okay, I stepped into a terrible trap here that I was unintentional. There is a white attitude where the white guy expects the person in the other community to educate me. I've got my pronouns all mixed up. I'm sorry. But, okay, let me talk just for a minute to fellow white guys. Hey, fellow white guys, don't say what I just said. That was an error on my part, and I'm correcting it quickly because I know it's wrong. It's not up to members of other communities other than white guy to educate us. That's not their job. So what I tried to do, I researched this on my own. I found what they're saying about it to the press, in their academia, in their conversations. And, if it's okay with them, then it's okay with me. If they're bothered by something, then, I listen to them. I don't count on them to teach me. It's not their job to make me feel better about things. I take the initiative. Anyway, I'm lost in the weeds here. It all gets very confusing. I love everybody. White guy talking here. So, yeah, I find the tomahawk chop just weird and gross, and I'd never do it. And now the Kansas City Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, so we're going to see it. Oh, God, we're going to see it. I hate it. It's not right at the top of my list because, like I say, a lot of natives, at least from the reading I've done, is kind of a mixed bag. Everybody is against the R word. Nobody wants the Washington R words. That's just, That's just horrible. I can't believe that still exists today. That is just crazy. So there it is. Yeah, I'd be rooting for any team versus Kansas City. But it's my own beloved San Francisco 49ers. I was there during a good time. I was there during the tail end of Joe Montana's time, and then during Steve Young. You know, a little football talk here for a second. There are a couple things I know about the Niners and their fans. Their great success under Bill Walsh, and then I forgot who succeeded him, but they Seifert. Anyway, he won another couple of Super Bowls with, or at least one, with Steve Young. I give Bill Walsh all credit for that because Steve Young was injured several times while I was out there watching games, and they never dropped a beat. They never dropped a beat when Steve Young went out. It wasn't really, Montana gets credit for being one of the greats of all time, and Steve Young, he's another Hall of Famer. But I was out there, and I would see games where Steve Young, he never had lingering injuries, but he was out several times while I was there. He'd miss a game or two a season. They never dropped a beat. They just had a system. They had a system that worked and that the rest of the teams in the NFL, it took them a few years to figure out. So there's that. And also, Niner fans. I got many friends out in the Bay Area to this day. I love you guys. I love the Bay Area. I love the people out there. I have many close friends out there. I love you guys. If you're listening, I love you. And I think you'll agree with me when I say that San Francisco 49er fans are fair weather fans. As soon as things go south, I lived out there for like 15 years, and I saw this firsthand. As soon as things go south, they jump off the bandwagon. They jump off that cable car faster than any other fans I've seen. And it's not like they grumble and complain. No, it's even worse than that. It's not like they badmouth the Niners. They do that just for a couple seconds, and then they're just gone. They don't hate their team when they're doing badly. They just completely ignore them like they don't exist. It's on to other things. If midway through the third quarter things aren't going well, they just go off and do something else, as though the Niners don't exist. San Francisco 49er fans are just, nobody's more excited when they're doing well. They love that. Well, this is probably true for most every fan base, but not the Packers. See, I grew up as a Packer fan, and you absolutely love the Packers. And I mean love with a capital Love. And you hang with them through the third quarter when the game is looking bad, and through the fourth quarter when it looks like, well, we have no chance. You're still hanging on every snap. You're on the edge of your seat. You're just loving your team. And I'm old enough. I went through the 70s and the 80s. Oh my God, the Packers sucked for almost 20 years. You don't just stick with them through a game. You stick with them through a whole season and season after season. So that's how I grew up. When you grow up, you're a kid, you assume things. You don't understand how different people do things differently. So I assumed that all fans felt that way about their teams. And then I moved to San Francisco and lived there for 15 years and discovered that, oh no, when they do badly, they go away. So that's Niner fans. You're all excited right now, and I'm with you, and I love you, and I'm rooting for the team too. But if it's looking bad for them in midway through the third quarter of the Super Bowl, I hope you'll hang with them. Hey, speaking of the Niners, you hear about this Katie Sowers? Katie Sowers is her name. She's the first, she's the second woman coach. She's an assistant offensive coach for the San Francisco 49ers. Only the second woman in the NFL to hold such a position. And the first openly gay NFL assistant coach. And currently the only woman coaching in the NFL. So that's kind of cool. Good for Katie Sowers. We like that. And someday when the world is better, there'll be all sorts of genders and transgender and just openly gay, and that'll be fine. It'll be fine. There's still no openly gay players in the NFL. Just a handful of ex-players who've come out later. And then, what's his name? I forgot his name, who never quite made it. Drafted, but then cut before the regular season, I guess. So we're still waiting for that. But for the moment, we have Katie Sowers, assistant offensive coach for the San Francisco 49ers. Will be prowling the sidelines on Super Bowl Sunday, so that's nice. We like that. Hey, you know what? Before we get off football, maybe a bad time to plug the show, but I'll do it anyway. There's a program on our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, called The Packerverse with host Nick Kovac. It's really good. I recommend it. I'm not sure. We'll find out. I'm not sure what he does in the off season. I think the show takes a hiatus, or maybe it continues. I'm not sure what Nick does. I'll have to ask him next time I see him in the hallway down at River West Radio. But Nick Kovac is a pretty cool guy, and what I love about the Packerverse is, he talks football, and it's a lot of film study. It's the game itself. He and his co-host, whose name I can't recall at the moment, I apologize, they talk football. They talk about the sport, as opposed to commercial sports radio, where they do that as well, but they spend a lot of their time talking about money and gossip and all the sort of ancillary, tangential issues around sports. And especially professional sports, where the big contracts come into play, and it's all about these sort of amateur fantasy pretend executives talking about possible trades and contracts and deals and bonuses, and it's all about money and stuff. And then also they tend to be, I'm not going to broad stroke everybody on this, but they tend to be, let's face it, misogynist, sexist, a little weird socially, these sports guys. But Nick Kovac is a really interesting, cool guy who not only does the sports angle, but then he's into other things. He's into kind of Native American history, I've heard him talk about, and sort of mythology and politics, and he's this kind of Renaissance guy. And without labeling him, I wouldn't want to do that. From my time listening, he seems like a pretty cool guy. Relatively liberal, lefty. I don't want to label him, but he's unique in that way. Because most sports guys, you kind of have to be a jerk, you know. Sports people in the media, they kind of go hand in hand. You're either this likable doofus, like a great example there is Tony Romo. He knows football inside and out, but if he ever mentions anything else outside the world of football, he's just this innocuous blank slate doofus kind of a guy, you know. Tony Romo, the Burlington native, our own homegrown boy here, went on to great success with the Dallas Cowboys, and now is the best color commentator in the business. We love Tony Romo around here. But I tune in occasionally to sports radio, and yeah, the hosts and the callers both, the guys who don't represent guydom very well. So, I recommend the Packerverse with Nick Kovac on River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Check it out. You can listen to the past shows. I think they're always online at riverwestradio.com. He's a pretty cool dude. I recommend it. So good for you, Nick Kovac and Packerverse. Good for you. So that's all we'll say about Super Bowl and football. That's not going to come up again for a while. But now we've just got to trudge through here. We got the rest of January, all of February, all of March. Sometimes the snow sticks all through April into May. A couple of years ago, we had snow in May. So it's that time of year. But I'm fine. This is just a little bit tough. So yeah, late winter, early spring. That's my tough time of year. You'll help me get through it, won't you? I appreciate that. Thanks. It's the log. I'm Charles Purcell.
Oh, hey, how you doing there, Uncle Chuck?
Well, hello there, Chucky Bucky. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm all right there, sure. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for asking.
See, what you got on that table right there? It looks like you got a whole big pile of sand. What's going on?
Well, I prepared a little thought experiment for you. Take a look.
Oh, okay then.
So here's what I'd like you to do, if you would, for me. Take with your finger there, if you can, just take a single grain of sand off of the pile, if you would.
Okay. So, that's kind of hard. They're tiny. I can. It's hard to grab just one.
Oh well, that's okay.
Okay, there I got it. Okay, I got a grain of sand. I got one little grain of sand in my hand.
Okay, fine. Now put it down on the table over there next to the pile, but not on the pile. So now here, what do you got on the table there, Chucky Bucky?
Well, you got right there. I got a pile of sand, and then next to it, there I got one grain of sand.
Well, that's exactly right. And would you call that a pile? The pile of sand? Would you call it a pile?
Well, sure. I just did call it a pile. We're sure, right?
And the single grain of sand, would you call that a pile of sand?
Well, no, of course not. It's not a pile of sand. It's just a grain, a single grain.
All right, okay. We're with each other so far. Now take another grain from the pile and put it into the and put it next to there, right on top of the other grain. Okay.
Okay, sure, all right, there it is.
All right, now, so is that still a pile there? You took a couple grains off. Is it still a pile?
We sure it is, of course.
And the two grains there, would you call that a pile of sand?
Why, no, it's just a couple of grains.
Right, okay, we're still with each other. Now what I want you to do, take a little pinch from the pile, like you take a pinch of salt, a little pinch. You probably got, I don't know, what do you got there?
Well, let me see here. Take a look. I don't know, 5 or 6 maybe grains of sand. It's just a tiny little pinch.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, now put that on top of the other little couple grains you had there. And you're estimating, you got, I don't know, half a dozen grains there. Okay, have we got a pile now?
Well, no, I wouldn't call it a pile at all. No, it's just a couple little droppings there of sand. That's all it is.
And is the pile still a pile?
Well, of course it is.
All right. Okay, one more time. Take another pinch, like you take a pinch of salt, maybe a little bigger this time. Just don't worry about it. Take a pinch and drop it there next to it with the others. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
So have you got 2 piles of sand there? The big one's still a pile, I would think you'd say.
Well, sure, of course it's still a pile. It's oh geez, almost 5 inches tall. Take a lot of pinches for that not to be a pile.
Well, of course. And have you started a new pile with the next to it there?
Well, if you put it that way, yeah, I guess I've started a pile. I don't know if I'd call it a pile yet.
No, probably not. Now, if you do it a few more times, go ahead. Take several big pinches there. Take a few. All right, just go ahead. There's one. There's 2. There's another. All right. Now, our original pile of sand is still a pile.
Sure.
And the new pile of sand, is that a pile yet?
Gee, I don't know if you call it a pile. I don't know what you call it. It's maybe a tiny pile. If we kept going, it's gonna be a pile.
All right, then I guess that's a fair way to put it. It's gonna be a pile. It's a potential pile. Maybe somebody might call it a tiny pile. It wouldn't have, if you need an agreement on that, you might not have 2 people agree, but yeah, maybe it's gonna be a pile. If you keep on going, it certainly will be.
Sure. So, all right, so what's the point?
Well, the point is, it really comes down to language, doesn't it? And it comes down to more than just language. It comes down to an agreement. At some point, if you keep repeating this process of taking pinches from one pile and then on to another, at some point, at the end of this process at least, the original pile is going to no longer be a pile. It's just going to be a dusting of a few grains, and then the pile next to it will have become a pile when it's all said and done, right?
Yep. Okay, we're with each other.
Well, the question then is, when did the original pile cease to be a pile, and at what point did the pile next to it become a pile?
Geez, I don't know. How do you answer that?
Well, that's my point. You can't really answer it. It's not an answerable question. Again, we all agree that at the end of the process, the original pile is no longer there, and the new pile is now a pile. But we can't say when one ended and the other began.
No, I guess we can't. But still, I'm still going to say again, what's the point?
Well, it's a philosophical point.
Yeah, but that's the trouble that a lot of people have with philosophy. It's just, a lot of talk for nothing. Like who cares? Sure, might be kind of fun to, bat back and forth these ideas of language and of what we agree on.
Well, sure, but I guess what I'm trying to say is our use of language and the fact that it requires agreement, well, that comes into play in our lives all the time, not just in little philosophical thought experiments.
Well, sure, I guess they do.
Especially in politics or in lawmaking. I'll bet it wouldn't be too tough for you to think of a couple of examples.
Oh, sure, I know what you're saying. Like, age of consent would be an example of that. When, we make laws about, children can't do certain things. They can't, drive a car or, get married or buy alcohol, things like, there are lots of things that we do on age.
Well, that's right. We have to choose an age. Just like we have to choose when one pile becomes a pile and the other no longer is, we have to choose a date on that in that lifespan. So at 15 years old, you're able to get your learner's permit, and at 16 years old, you're able to get your driver's license. Those are decisions we've made as a community, represented through our government, through our lawmakers. But you can't really know something for sure, exactly this is the exact moment. We have to just decide among ourselves what's best.
Well, that's right. Okay, so, but that's pretty simple, I guess, right?
Well, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. To take the most obvious and controversial one of all, it would be the abortion laws. And when you're talking about from conception to birth, at what point is that new human life actually life? Or at what point is it viable? And when can you have to make decisions like that.
Oh, sure, but, it's not, in that case, it's not just the life itself, but, the right of the woman comes into play and really should supersede everything else in that argument.
I'm with you on that one. And we won't pretend that this is a big controversial thing. You and I agree that women should have the absolute 100% right on what to do with their bodies. And so the law shouldn't apply, and it's still the woman's right. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think we're getting over our heads here. I think we should go to another example, because I think maybe, we should just not even try to go there.
Well, I would agree with you on that. But getting back to our little sand pile thought experiment, whenever we have decisions to make about what is and isn't a thing, and it is important, I think we need to keep in mind that we can't really know, right?
Right, like you said, we can't really know when one pile stops being a pile and the other one begins to be a pile. We can't really know, and we should just be okay with that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We shouldn't pretend we know. I guess that's the most important thing. We know at some point one's a pile and one isn't, but we shouldn't pretend to know that exact moment. And by my way of thinking, that's directly analogous to so many decisions we have to make as people together living on the planet.
Well, sure, because that's like that's the fundamental argument, right? From the very beginning of people and concepts of law and government.
Well, sure, from everything to decisions on whether or not to go to war, any kind of a regulation, food safety or environmental concerns.
Right. You got to decide, how much carbon emission is too much. They got to put numbers on everything.
Right. And when any kind of rights are in conflict, your right to do one thing, say your right to take water from the stream versus the rights of everyone to make sure that stream remains viable and healthy.
Sure. The old thing where, my right to throw my fist in the air ends at your nose is what they say, right? That's the old kind of canard they use.
That's right again, sure. Free speech is another issue. We all believe in the right of free speech, but there's a point at which your speech can be incendiary. It can really cause a lot of harm. It can be threatening to other people, threatening to their safety or their well-being.
Sure, this is the very essence of law, right? Making that line of demarcation between what we should do and what we shouldn't do.
Sure, now you're really getting it.
So what's our bottom line then there, Uncle Chuck? If we can't know when the sand, becomes a pile and not a pile. We can't know exactly what the age of consent is. There really isn't, it's not written into the rules of, physics, or even if you're a religious type, it's not written in the laws of nature or of God that this is right or this is wrong. Those are tough to decide.
Sure, even on the most fundamental things. Thou shalt not kill. Well, then, it's self-defense. Is it all right to kill in self-defense?
Sure, right. It gets all sticky, and that's why laws are tough to make.
Tell you what, for the rest of our conversation, let's step into my little imaginary car here.
Oh, you got an imaginary car for this. Oh, okay, great.
Sure, open the door there, hop on in.
Okay, it was a nice car.
Start her up here.
Oh, good. Hey, not bad.
Yeah.
Pretty smooth ride.
We got the little low rumble of the car noise underneath us as we continue this journey that we're on here, this little philosophical journey. Now we're in an imaginary car.
So, okay, this is nice.
I just think it's important that all of us, every one of us, no matter what side of the controversy you're on, I think we should all acknowledge the sand pile metaphor here, that we don't really know. We can't set a certain criteria that's hard and fast in most cases. Let's agree on that going in.
Okay, I think that's important. I agree with you. And then what you do, once you have acknowledged that together, you've agreed, even though you're on, maybe the most opposing sides, you start with that agreement that you can't know exactly the right thing, but let's put our heads together and try to do what's right. Both acknowledging that there's a little bit of arbitrariness in that decision.
Right. Nobody claims to have divine knowledge or perfect scientific certainty on this or that, and yet we have to make the decision. So one pile of sand turning into another pile of sand, there's no life and death on that, but in so many other things. Again, the big ones we mentioned, questions of war and peace, questions of environmental safety, food safety regulation, all sorts of things, ages of consent, that sort of thing. Protection of children.
Yeah, we got to make those decisions without pretending that we know.
Right. Just like the little rumble, the little soft rumble of the car, you've noticed is it's not there anymore, is it?
Hey, you're right, it's not. What is that?
Well, that's a major D chord, and at some point, without either of us even really thinking about it or noticing, the soft rumble of the car driving turned into a major D chord.
That's right, and there's no denying it. It's certain that what's happening now is not what was happening then. And at some point it changed.
Well, that's right. And if our lives depended on knowing the exact moment of that change, well, we'd be done for.
Right. But if we decided just together to choose the right moment, knowing that, 1 second before and 1 second after don't make a heck of a lot of difference at all, that's no argument not to make the decision.
Exactly right. You've got it.
Okay, then. So that's pretty good, Uncle Chuck. There's your sand pile little metaphor, and I enjoyed the ride in the imaginary car.
Good. All right, now, here's what I'm going to suggest. Let's get back in our car, and we'll start out again just as we did, but we'll just sit in silence and listen, and we won't speak again at all during this little trip, and we'll see if we can mark the time. When would you say that the car becomes the chord? At what moment would you decide that the car is no longer there, and now the chord stands alone in the world?
Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to go back in the car and sit silently and listen. And this will serve what purpose?
It's just a little contemplation. Give us time to think about what we just talked about, I guess. And it further illustrates that we can't really know. No one can know the exact right answer. But we live together on this planet. And we have to make decisions. And it's okay to make decisions together, collectively. And then if we have more information later, we can always amend those decisions, those kind of laws. But at any given moment, we have to act on what we have in front of us. And I guess that's my big point for the day.
Well, that's pretty good, Uncle Chuck. I like that. It's pretty good. Okay. All right, let's get in. Let's take that drive.
All right, then. Here we go. It's the log. I'm Charles Purcell. That was pretty good. There was Uncle Chuck and Chucky Bucky with a little philosophical meandering. That was not bad. Yeah, I think that's a worthwhile little thought experiment. Kind of interesting. The bottom line shows us that we can't really know anything for sure. And that's good, but it can be really dangerous. Because some people want to use that as an excuse to do nothing. Well, we can't know, so do nothing. And then you got the nihilist, and you also got the people trying to sow confusion. Now you got your kind of modern-day neo-Nazis and nationalists and fascists and, troublemakers and who want to say, well, since you really can't know, then why do you even care? Why do you even do anything? Kind of the nouveau pseudo-intellectual fascist Nazi, and they just want to sow confusion. It's a signature move from the historical fascists and Nazis, Mussolini and his crowd, to sow confusion among the people so that they just stop caring. Oh, it's all too complicated. And it's a favorite tactic of Vladimir Putin. And now, of course, we see it firsthand in this country. It is a very conscious effort by Agent Orange and his toadies to just muddy up the waters with lies and half-lies and fake news and conspiracy theories. And you just muddy everything up. And then it creates fatigue. And let's all be honest. We've all fought against this, and some of us have succumbed to fatigue. So I like that little reminder that we can't especially know, but we have to make decisions. We have to act collectively based on the best information we have at the time, willing to adjust if and when we find new information. So it's good to be humble. It's good to know that we can't know, because the other side of that coin, as opposed to the people who want to sow confusion, it's the people who think they know. They're just certain. They're absolutely certain. Life begins at conception. Things like that. I probably sound like one of those people occasionally when I insist that money must be abolished. That's the far end of a pretty big spectrum, I admit. And yeah, I probably do fall into that trap. I'm sure I do. In my defense, it's often hyperbole, but not really. I really do want money to be abolished. But at least I try to present the evidence. I try to make a case. I'm talking about people who don't even attempt to make a case. They just state what they believe, what they insist on is the truth. Then they make their case from that. In other words, they invent their own premise. They turn logic upside down. You're supposed to start with a premise, end with a conclusion. They make their conclusion the premise, and then they argue from there. Now, at least I don't do that. So, yeah, good little exercise there. When is a pile of sand, and when isn't it? And why is that important? I like that. Well, speaking of people trying to sow confusion, that's the only defense that Agent Orange has in the impeachment trial. Have you been watching this? We're not talking about it this week, you may have noticed. Show's almost over. We'll come back. I certainly have been watching pretty much every minute. We'll come back and find some unique things to say. Everything that can be said is being said, so I don't want to just join the din. When I have something unique to offer, I'll do that. I will say this, just from my own personal viewing of all of this, it's 100% airtight case, presented very well, and my overriding emotion right now is just really sadness. It's even taken over for anger or indignation, all of which I also have. But primarily it's sadness that an entire political party and half the nation can look at this and still just sort of make excuses or shrug their shoulders or outright willful ignorance and just lie about what they're seeing in front of their own eyes. Yeah, it's an airtight case. He should be removed from office. It's just painfully obvious. I was in the U.S. Senate chambers a couple of years ago when I went out to Washington, D.C. I just went in to watch them work for a while. And I have to tell you, I was really disappointed in the way the senators behaved as I'm sitting up in the gallery watching them. Somebody's trying to get something done. They're reading a bill or something or whatever, and the rest of the senators are chatting with each other. It looks like a little coffee klatch. And the presiding officer, they take turns being in the chair. The Senate who's in the chair is banging the gavel and begging the members to pay attention. Please take your seats. Please stop conversations. The Senate will come to order. The Senate will come to order. And this was not one or two isolated incidents. It was the entire time I was there. It happened at least a dozen times, probably more. It's what was constantly happening. Was these senators aimlessly roaming around the floor, the Senate floor, chatting with each other, talking with pages, I don't know what they were doing, but it didn't look at all like any kind of work. It was really unfocused. And I remember just feeling so disappointed in these guys. So what are you doing? Do your job. Well, that comes to mind because we're hearing reports. Senators are not doing their job. They are required to sit in their seats and listen silently. If you were on jury duty, you think you could just pull out a crossword puzzle, start doing it? You think you could get up and just walk out, go get yourself a drink, go chat for a while out in the hallway, maybe even talk to reporters? You think you could do that if you were on jury duty? That's what they're doing. One reporter counted on the very first night, it wasn't even that late yet, 20 senators missing from their seats. Well, come on. And one of the Republican criticisms is that it's boring. You know, everything's not a damn show. Yeah, come on, man. Anyway, I haven't got time for this. The clock is running here. I'll finish the story next week. I guess it's finished. That's all I needed to say. Oh, speaking of next week, it's our last regular show of season 1. And then February 8th is our anniversary show, which will be a full hour of highlights from season 1. So the podcast dated February 8th will be a full hour of highlights and not so much me pontificating, but all the fun stuff. The radio theater and the improvisation and the poetry and the music and stuff like that. So mark your calendars for February 8th. And then the following week, that's the big deal, February 15th is when we make the big move. We start season 2, and we're going to split the log into 2 shows. If you've been listening the last few weeks, I've explained it all. I'll just tell you quickly again, or if you haven't heard, the first half hour will be called The Log, just like it is now, and it'll be what you're hearing right now. It'll be me talking to you, just the two of us. It'll be just the two of us. It's a very intimate setting, just you and me. So that's my weekly offering of news and opinion. And the second half hour, we're going to go back to the old title, Charles Purcell Presents, and there you're going to have the quote-unquote fun stuff, radio theater, improvisation, music, poetry, weird stuff, absurd stuff occasionally, maybe more than occasionally. So you're still getting 1 hour a week. You still subscribe like you always have wherever you find your podcasts. But instead of 1 hour, you're going to get 2 half hours that you can download separately or individually. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a great change for us. Okay, there's my time.
This episode of The Log is available right now wherever you find your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, iHeart, YouTube, and the podcast source. Enter Charles Purcell Presents in the search window. Or best yet, go to charlespurcell.com. There you'll find this and all the other series in the podcast family. Follow, comment, and contact me on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Theme music composed and performed by Peter Donalds. From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell.